I mean, good morning for me, and good morning, good afternoon for some of the participants. Now we are having this session, session 5. Sorry. Okay. And today the idea is building new statistics to be regarded as investment. When you invest time and effort in integrated statistics, actually you invest for future statistics and better integrated statistics. And in this session, we will have 6 interesting papers from 4 different countries, and will be discussed in detail we will learn how various statistics are integrated, and this will allow us to learn from the experience of the countries. We hear 6 investment stories from across Asia. Bhutan has invested a Bhutan labor market information system, a web-based real-time data system to gather employment statistics from all formal sectors of the economy. On the other hand, Indonesia has invested in backward and forward linkage and input-output tables to analyze leading economic sectors, and also invested in estimating new forecasting GDP on monthly basis. Malaysia has invested in Malaysia Business Cycle Clock, embracing data visualization, while Nepal has invested in methods to identify poor households for targeting sampling. And finally, we will hear from DFID on how constitutional changes in Nepal has resulted in changes to how development partners invest in national statistical systems. Before starting, we will have a pool with all the participants. If I can have the pool in the meeting chat, please. And then we will ask you 2 questions. We will ask you 2 questions. The first one is, if you have integrated statistics in your country, you will answer with yes or no. And then we will ask you, what is this kind of integrated statistics in which area? I think we will have the poll at the meeting chat soon.
Yeah, actually the poll is already been posted, so participants can actually take the poll just by going into the chat.
Okay. I can see, but the participants could join, right? Okay. I cannot follow if the poll is really acting now, or Alec, the poll is operating right now, or?
Yes, it is.
I can't see in the meeting chat window.
Okay.
Okay.
Aishan, maybe people can just roll up the meeting chat, so it should be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's wait for a while. Okay.
Sean?
Yeah, I can see the poll.
Maybe we can get somebody to set their presentation. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then while it is okay. So let's start with the first presentation. The first one is from Bhutan, a new approach towards utilizing administrative data in Bhutan. So let me invite Tenzin Ugyen to make the presentation, please.
Thank you.
Yes, the floor is yours, Tenzin.
Can you see my screen?
We can see you, but we can see the presentation yet.
You see my presentation?
No, not yet.
Okay, share your screen.
If you have the presentation on your desktop, can you please share it with us? Share the screen button.
Yeah, I clicked on the screen button, but somehow my presentation is not popping up.
Can you click on share?
The share button,
The button next
upper
to the
arrow.
microphone. Okay,
Yes,
we can see it
yes,
now.
here.
Yes, we
Here.
can see that.
And can you make it slideshow?
Yeah, sure. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Please
So,
go ahead.
Yes.
okay, thank you. My name is Ken Tenzin, and I'm from Bhutan, working with the National Statistics Bureau. My presentation is on using administrative data sources, which is a new approach towards complementing official statistics. Now, why do we use administrative data for official statistics? We have been making a lot of policies and strategies based on survey data, but to implement targeted interventions, we need information at the individual level, which is only possible through administrative data sources. And these data sources are mostly available at a continuous flow because these data are being collected as part of the record keeping process of the agencies. And most interestingly, statistics which are derived from the administrative data sources can be obtained at disaggregated levels as compared to survey data. And when someone utilizes administrative data sources from various agencies, it also enables or enhances collaboration between the statistics office and the government agencies who are dealing with the administrative databases. And most importantly, using administrative data enhances data-driven decision making as well as implement targeted interventions. Now, my example on administrative data refers to the labor market information system, which was developed to function as the central employment repository interface for Bhutan. And the data which are generated through this labor market information system comprises of a complete set of information on job seekers, the existing workforce, and the enterprises in the formal sectors of the economy. As of date, the labor market information system in Bhutan particularly focuses only on the formal sectors of the economy because the data on these sectors are maintained by different agencies. Now, how does the BLMIs captures flow of data through other administrative systems? Now, the first indicator that we have in the labor market information system is the job seekers. The job seekers information is extracted basically from two systems. On the demographic profile, it is extracted from the civil and census registration system, and the education profile is extracted from the Ministry of Education's application database, job seekers only have to fill in certain aspects of their occupational preferences, which are also extracted from the job portal system. In terms of the second indicator on the employer, the details on the employers are extracted from the trade and industry system in Bhutan, and the employees' details are manually collected by the Ministry of Labor and then feed in to the employer's database. On the foreign workers system, the system gives the details of the foreign workers, which is then extracted by the labor market information system. Now, in terms of the information generation through the labor market information system, the labor market information system acts as the umbrella system which disseminates information on Bhutanese and foreign workers. In terms of Bhutanese, we have the three indicators which I mentioned before, and in terms of the foreign workers in Bhutan, this information particularly pertains to the foreign workers currently working in Bhutan. In terms of the findings and reports that we get from the BLMIS. Now, we also have another indicator which gives us the labor force status of Bhutan, which is through the annual labor force survey conducted by the National Statistics Bureau. Because of its frequency, which is annual in nature, most of the pertinent indicators such as unemployment spells and the job hopping natures of the labor force is not captured by the labor force survey. Basically, the survey doesn't capture seasonality issues and as well as transitional issues. This issues and spells are more precisely captured by the administrative data because the data system is a real-time data integration mechanism, which further enhances the ability of the planners and policy makers to formulate appropriate strategies to address the labor market challenges. Now, in terms of what has this system or how has this system benefited Bhutan, especially the Ministry of Labor and Human Resources, the system has considerably enhanced targeted interventions and evidence-based approach while coming up with the relevant employment programs and policies. However, much needs to be done in terms of capturing a holistic view of the total labor force. Basically, the labor market system supports or complements the findings of the labor force survey, and it proves that it is a reliable source of information, and gradually agencies or relevant stakeholders should take into importance the contribution of administrative data and shift towards utilizing this kind of administrative data in line with the conventional technical survey which is being regularly conducted. And administrative data in terms of labor and employment has a lot of capacity or the capability to analyze deep down into other measures such as short-term employment or unemployment spells and frictional unemployment. As I also highlighted before the before I got into the details of the labor market information system, the Ministry of Labor has very recently embarked on utilizing the administrative data by integrating various stakeholder administrative databases into this labor market information system. Much needs to be done in terms of ensuring the flow of data and as well as the management of this administrative database to ensure quality and reliability. There also needs to be a proper method for organization of this data, and access to this data has to be made easier. Likewise, because administrative data are mostly utilized as a record-keeping process, most of these databases are currently being managed by different agencies without proper transfer and storage modules. Therefore, through this paper and through the results or conclusions submitted through this paper, a requirement for a data ecosystem network which will integrate this data flow and a formation of a central data repository is a necessary step that Bhutan needs to take in order to move to the second phase of utilizing administrative databases. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to remind the audience, if you have any questions, you can write in the meeting chat window. So after the 3 presentations, we will have the answers for your questions. Thank you very much that you shared your experience in this labor market survey. So our next presenter is ready. I can see Remhari, Gayre Remhari. The floor is yours, Remhari.
Thank you, Aishan.
Can you share your presentation, please? Can you share your presentation?
Can you see my presentation?
No, we can't see. Can you share with the share button? The up right arrow. Yes. And can you make it in slideshow mode, please?
Is it okay now?
Yes, yes. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Ram Arigaire from the Central Bureau of Statistics, Nepal. My topic is identification of poor households for targeting in Nepal. In my presentation, I will present something about poverty measurement practices in Nepal, poor household support program that uses the identification program, and identification of poor households methodology, and pro-poor social protection programs that is recommended by the identification program. So in Nepal, a cost of basic needs approach of poverty measurement has been initiated since 1995-96 when we did Nepal Living Standard Survey first with LSMS methodology. And there are 3 rounds of Nepal Living Standard Survey, and based on them, we have poverty estimates. And the estimates are not representative to the lower level. They are at national, sub-national level. And using similar estimation with this analysis, Living Standard Survey and census data, we produce the poverty estimates at the lower level, local level, district and ilaka and municipality level. And the need of identification of the poor households comes from the theory that the estimates that is available, they are not at the disaggregated level, they are at the national and regional level. Similar estimation was done to get the estimates at the local level, but that is not sufficient sometimes to target the individuals who cannot get benefit from the area targeting. That's why the programs that needs to be targeted individually could not be done even with the similar estimation. That's why we went through individual household identification. So for that, Government of Nepal established Poor Household Support Coordination Board, which did poverty poor household identification program. And there were 25 districts out of 75 districts at that time have a survey, and that used proxy means testing methodology. And this produced strong and unique database at the household level. The function was identify the poor households, coordinate and regulate poor programs among different agencies, and provide policy guidelines to relevant agencies based on the identified poor household. This is the map of Nepal, the little bit old one. Out of 75 districts, we carried out this identification in the 25 districts which are relatively poor. And the implementation plan for this poverty identification is preparatory phase, data collection phase, validation and finalization phase, and finally feedback and ID card distribution phase. These are the 4 phases that we utilize in Nepal, and that is going to be updated in another round. The steps of the identifications are data planning, collection of data, develop PMT model, develop 4 household information management information system, and identification models deriving, and developing and facilitating integrated approach, necessary information extraction from the 4 households, and coordinate 4 targeted programs with recommendations from this support program. And what is proxy means test? In fact, this is a statistical model to estimate the consumption level of the household with using proxy variables. They are not collected directly because income and expenditure type of fee cannot be collected at the household level in a large scale. So their correct characteristics are, they are country specific. They need to be not easily manipulated. They are easily observable and verifiable by the enumerators at the time of data collection, and data availability is definitely there. There is a system of HIBIS, 4 household identification management information system database. There are different stages that we produce the database in a separate server, so that can be used by the government and other agencies who organize poverty targeting programs. The identification methodology encompasses many steps. First of all, what we did a census of every household in 25 districts out of 75 with a limited number of variables. They are explanatory to poverty. Proximate test tools, they were derived with the Nepal Linguist and the Survey database with some variables, identified variables. Statistically significant 18 variables were identified using the regression modeling, and the prediction of per capita consumption was done at household level, and based on that, certain percentage of populations are identified as poor at the district level. That is given by the smaller estimation results, and the total poor are even further classified in 3 groups: bottom 50% as extreme poor, middle 30% as mid poor, and upper 20% as general poor. Indicators for poverty map proximity test model, there were 18 indicators, 4 from demographic and human capital characteristics, 4 from physical housing characteristics, 4 from household amenity, and 3 from household facilities, and 3 from geographic or ethnic group variations. The key question for generating proxy mean test model, in fact, is a linear regression model, multiple linear regression. This is the formula where dependent variable is the per capita consumption, and the beta coefficients are to be determined using the regression model. And for the regression modeling, certain steps were followed. There were 2 data sets now, Living Standard Survey 2010-11, where we have almost 6,000 households, and that coefficients are planted in 4 household identification survey carried out in 2013. It has 1.2 million, more than that households, and we adopted forward stepwise regression with population weight in per capita consumption that produced 18 variables with 57 subcategories, and there is a single national model finally applied with a series of tests with regional models, and the nominal per capita consumption was converted into real one to get a single value for all over the country to adjust the price, and belt and region dummies were used. This is the result of the ANOVA and regression results. We can see the prediction part, almost 50% of the variability in per capita consumption have been explained by 57 categories, some 18 variables in the regression modeling. While running the regression, we encountered some of the problems. So there was some problem in unique ID at the household level. Some household ID were missing, mismatches of lower level IDs, and questionnaires were collected and they were scanned and kept it in a repository so that we can utilize it while cross-check after the identification process. So grievance handling technique, this is the one that is very important to identify, to make sure whether particular individual household that we identified as poor are really poor or not. That's why we validate by field verification with field observation, interview with the household heads, civil societies, knowledgeable person with selected wards at the areas where we identified poor households. So it was reviewed by a local level, village development committee and municipal secretaries at the local level. And that grievance handling technique was further investigated at the district level by district coordination committee to identify poor. And finally, that was the consistency of the variables used for PMT model and the household variables are cross-checked at the central level to finally announce whether the particular household is poor or not. So this is the result of the PMT modeling. Finally, we turned out to be 1.2 million households. Out of 1.2 million households, we got some 1 million households, around 188,235. 15% are extreme poor, 25% are mid poor, and so 9.8% are mid poor, and finally ordinary poor around 7%. This is the result that we produced. And in district level, there is a great variation of the poverty rates among the districts, 25 districts. We can see larger districts, there are more poor compared to the smaller districts, but the proportion of poor is higher with the districts with the lower population. So based on the results that we produced, we recommended it to the government, the Board of Poor Identification. There are 5 or 6 programs that needs to be implemented based on the poor identification. One is the conditional cash transfer by the type of poor. Extreme poor may get better, and mid poor may get less, and general poor may get some. So conditional cash transfer, these are the recommendations that we provided to the government by the board. And there is a health insurance program by the type of poor. So it is for the extreme poor, 100% premium will be covered by the government. Mid poor, 75% of the premium will be covered by the government, and the general poor, 50% of the premium will be covered by the government. This is the only one program that has been completely implemented. Other programs are recommended only. That they are yet to be implemented. And there are some recommendations for scholarship for 2 students of the poor households based on the school records. Another recommendation was support for extreme poor households on food sufficiency to afford for cereals, pulses, oil, salt, etc. The cost of all the items has been calculated based on the household variable available in the survey. And employment-oriented need-based skills development training are recommended to go for the poor households rather than giving training to all the households. And support for improving dwelling conditions of the poor. The condition of the dwelling has been derived from the census, every household that we counted in poor household identification survey. So these are the recommendations that we produced based on the poor household, identified poor households. This is the all that I could present here. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much for the interesting presentation. I would like to invite the participants to write their questions. After the third presentation, we will have a question and answer part of the session that the presenters will answer your questions. Now I'm moving to the next presentation. From Jamal. Jamal will talk us about the developing Malaysia's business cycle clock. I invite Jamal to present, please. Yes. Jamal? Let's see. Jamal is here? No? Maybe the connection was lost or something. Okay.
Maybe CT could be the one presenting.
Yes.
Okay, let's start. Very good afternoon to moderator, ladies and gentlemen. Yes?
Ah, okay. Siti, you're presenting. Yes. Siti,
Okay.
yes,
I will
floor
start
is
now.
yours.
Okay,
yes, yes, your presentation is on the screen. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, a very good afternoon to moderator, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I'm going to present a paper entitled Developing Leisure Business Cycle Cloud MBCC for a better insight on economic cycle. This presentation will cover 5 topics. The first one is introduction, followed by literature review, methodology, and the development of interactive MBCC and conclusion. Without any ado, let's proceed to the introduction. In the rising of digital era, people blended technology into their daily life to allow real-time communication and easy access to information. With the rapid advancement of technology, rapid transition of the traditional presentation of time series on leading electronics. It provides a new dimension to the movement of the economic cycle visually and interactively. The interactive visualization is an innovative approach of data dissemination, which is in line with the practice of other national statistical offices. There are various theories regarding the causes and nature of business cycle. Thus, it is surprising that the much debated issue. Nevertheless, most economists would still agree with the definition given by Bell and Mission, 1946. The economic cycles work its way through 4 phases. Ruth Salton and etc. 2005 believe that the business cycle tracer is a useful tool for the description of the Dutch business cycle. Besides that, it offers a reliable representation of the current state of the business cycle. Supported by Kanata 2020, to convey information about the cyclical situation in different phases of economic activity, which visualized using a cloud-type graph. The dissemination is characterized as a procedure of discharging measurement through different mediums such as printed and media by Larry Hyde, 1997. In line with this motivation, the Department of Statistics looked at initiative to develop the MBCC in order to implementation of the measures economic cycle and move towards a better dissemination approach to reach the user. The development of MBCC involves 3 steps. First, trend estimation and cyclical extraction. Trend is a gradual shifting of movement, including the overall upward or downward pattern in time series over a long period of time. In economic influence such as population growth, price inflation, and general economic development. The development of MBCC will use Horry-Prescott filter to estimate the long-term trend of the selected MBCC components. Second, the estimation of X and Y coordinate. The interface of MBCC is a coordinate system. The X coordinate representing the direct change, while the Y coordinate is the distance to its long-term trend, which measures the state of the selected components. The X coordinate is calculated based on the movement from point A to point B. Meanwhile, the Y coordinate is calculated based on point B and point C, which is the period-to-period change of the selected components. The indicators are placed in the diagram accordingly to the coordinates resulting from their cycle. As the cycle develops, it will follow anti-clockwise path through the diagram, moving from quadrant to quadrant as it moves. In developing the MBCC, it is important to determine whether the cycle is above or below the long-term trend and whether it is increasing or decreasing. The MBCC portrays visualization of the cycle divided into 4 quadrants, which can be entered the estimation of risk zone. The time series data fluctuate along its long-term trend with different amplitude, either not deviate further or otherwise. This will absolutely affect the coordinate position in MBCC, which indicates the state of the economy. Thus, the movement of the components can be clustered according to the level of the risk zone was estimated by box plot using the coordinate of the selected component of MBCC. The results are shown in the slide. Okay, next, the MBCC visualization can be illustrated as in the slide. It provides users with the latest finding of the Malaysian Economic Indicators publication. For example, software in the future as the finding for February 2020 Malaysian Economic Indicator. The visualization also provides the autoplay and slider button. Thus, user can choose the reference month to be visualized. The time series data are ready from January 1995 until to date. On the right side, there are two important tabs. Firstly, the Composite Index tab, which will display the Composite Leading Index and Composite Coincident Index. The second tab is the component. It consists of 7 components of Composite Leading Index and 6 components of the Composite Coincident Index. The visualization also offers a description of MBCC. For example, what is the MBCC? What is the principle used? The details how to calculate the coordinate X and Y, and what is the criteria for the components to be selected in the MBCC. Ladies and gentlemen, the MBCC was launched officially on 5th December 2019. Until April 2020, a total of 3,816 hits are recorded by the interactive MBCC. Within that period, the publication only recorded 2,286 hits. Next is the initial team and design of interactive data visualization. The challenging task begins to transform the time series data into the core items in preparation to meet the requirements of the visualization software. This is to make sure the right economic pace is visualized for each point for each component. To face the challenges, prototype of the dashboard, the officers who are responsible and directly involved with application before then consulted by the IT technician. Second, limited expertise. The software used for the MBCC visualization is fully customizable and requires specialized expertise. Therefore, knowledge transfer between the MBCC development team and team are important to ensure the continuity support from the expert in maintaining the visualization, especially when it involves migration to the latest version of the software used. Third, limited availability of infrastructure. The current infrastructure of MBCC needs to be improved to provide smooth access to the general public, especially to accommodate more than 1,000 concurrent users. The devices used are also required to have Adobe Flash support for visualizing the interactive content of MBCC. Action is being taken to address this limitation by developing MBCC using the latest infrastructure. Lastly, for the conclusion, DOSM has taken one step ahead to develop an interactive channel to disseminate in statistics and to strengthen the statistic delivery service delivery. The interactive application, which will help users in searching live data will enhance DOSM service delivery system. Regardless of the key role of DOSM to provide official statistics to stakeholders, the success of the official statistics system is also measured by its ability in fulfilling a variety of statistics that are required by the stakeholders, community, businesses, and researchers on daily and real-time basis. Special thanks to Dr. Abdul Talib and colleagues, which has assisted us greatly in developing the visualization of MBCC. Any inquiries regarding the development of the MBCC, kindly email to me, noraini.rosli@dosm.gov.my. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Siti, for your presentation. We can have the questions now for Siti also. And we have some questions from the audience in the chat box. We can start with the Tenzin. Can you please answer the question in the chat box?
Okay, thank you. I think the question to me was on the difficulties faced while forming data or gathering data from the agencies who have administrative data. I think in the case of Bhutan, we are still yet to go into full swing with the administrative data source. But as of date, while we were trying to come up with this labor market information system, we had to integrate a lot of administrative databases from other agencies. Now, first issue that we initially faced while coming up with this system was the agencies being reluctant to the administrative databases. I think that is an issue across all countries wherein agencies are not confident or not ready to give access to their databases. And the second issue, which is more in terms of the data and statistics, is that because we are using administrative data from different agencies, and agencies, while developing their systems, have their own descriptions of variables or definitions of the variables being used. So these are the two major challenges we faced because we were getting in employed or unemployed numbers from various agencies, and they have their own definitions and descriptions on the variables, while technically the definition of unemployment and employment differs if you look at ILO. So these are the two issues that we initially faced. First is accessibility to the administrative databases from agencies, and the second is on the description of the variables and the definitions of variables which are captured in the other administrative data sources. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is this answer to your question, Lavri? I can't read your country as well. Okay. All right. Okay, let's move on. Other questions from Alec. I think Alec has 2 questions to Nepal. Yes, the first question is, could you please go ahead with the questions?
Thank you, Aishin. I could see 3 queries to my presentation. One is about how do you define the hardcore poor? While classifying poor, now we have adopted on methodology, because in the new poor household identification survey dataset, 1.2 million households, for each and every household, we had the per capita consumption that is predicted using the regression coefficients. So based on that, what we did in district level, in each district, we ranked the per capita consumption of the poor. Poverty rates are already given by similar estimation. The poor that we identified were classified into the bottom 50% of the poor that we identified. They are considered as hardcore poor. One may have a question that whether it is there any specific line that divides whether this is a hardcore poor or not? No. We couldn't find that line. But what we did is, out of the total poor, bottom 50%, which per capita consumption is below bottom 15%, they are from that hardcore poor. That is what we call extreme poor in our analysis. This is the first one. Another one, question, what are specific examples of proxy variables, proxy examples? The variables that we utilize for the poverty, now based on PMP, we have to choose the variable. They change slowly over time. They are outcome variables, so that even if there are differences between some poverty measurement survey and the survey or the census complete count that we are going to identify the poor, so the variables that we take, they are household characteristics, so that there won't be much changes over time. So they will predict, they will give the level of poverty. So physical and housing characteristics, we have 4 variables: type of roof, floor, type of foundation, household ownership. These are the types. Another one is demographic variables: household size, level of education of the household head, absentee member in the household. These are the variables that can explain poverty indirectly. So they are taken as indirect variables of household amenities are there: toilet, lighting, fuel, drinking water, cooking fuel. These are the things that we put them as a proxy variable for the identification of the poor. This is the second one. Another question was whether there is any update on poverty level in COVID-19 to look change over time. In fact, we are interested to have some proxy type of survey or some study on the COVID-19 period, but we couldn't do because we are doing next round of living standard survey, Nepal Living Standard Survey 2020 to 2021. So we are on this path. That's why in between 2 surveys, I don't think there is other thing that we can do. So we have to wait until next year we get the poverty results, but that won't represent any for the COVID-19 period, but give comparable results from the earlier one, Nepal Living Standard Survey 3. So we have to wait for that. But COVID-19 period, unfortunately, could not be carried out. I think these are the 3 questions that I could see. If there is anything, please remind me. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Ramhari. I think this explains the questions. We have one more question for Bhutan to Tenzin from Yunarti is asking.
Okay, thank you. I think
Yes.
there are quite a number of questions on this. First is on the percentage of employees being covered in the formal and informal sector in the labor market information system. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we have just embarked on utilizing administrative data for this labor market information system in Bhutan. And our target right now has been the private and corporate sector, which are part of the formal sector. In the next phase, we'll be integrating with the civil service, then go and move on with the informal sector. In terms of the data on the private and corporate sector, we tracked or validated it with the labor force survey findings. And as of date, when we look at the data, the system has been able to capture 56% of the employees in the private and corporate sector. This system is still at a development or evolving stage. So probably in the years which will come by, the system will be able to capture all the formal sector labor force. In terms of quality, I think because these data are mostly managed and handled by the HR managers of the respective private companies, where it is a big company, or in the smaller shops, which are handled mostly by the owners. And these are also the data which are being submitted to the tax administration. So the quality and reliability of the data is much more higher than the survey reports. And in terms of how long does it take to integrate the systems, I think as long as the format of the data that you want to collect and the format of the data which are being managed by the administrative data systems match, and the system compatibility is not an issue, integration doesn't really take much time, because this is purely a IT development issue, and depending on the capacity of the IT personnel at your disposal, it shouldn't take much time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for the explanations. I'm just checking if there are any more questions. Our participant from Russia, Lavriv, right? Would you like to answer? Would you like to ask your question again, Lavriv? I can't. Okay. Central Analytics Platform. Actually, Larry made a comment, not a question. I could see, and he says that in Russian Federation there's also some problems in developing central administrative platform. So I think he could get some of your experience. And okay, let's see if there are any other questions for the first 3 presentations. No, but we can have later on also. Now we can move on the second part of our session. In the second part, we will have 3 more presentations. Now Ilham is ready, I see, very excited. He will talk about the temporal disaggregation method for estimating Indonesia's monthly GDP. Floor is yours, Ilham. And please share your presentation.
Thank you, Alishan. Could you hear my sound?
Yes, we hear you, but your presentation is not on the screen.
I will share.
Can you share? Can you share your screen?
Have the slide on screen.
Yes, yes. Please go ahead.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Muhammad Irsyad Ilham. I am from Statistics of Indonesia. This occasion, I want to talk about my research with the title Temporal Disaggregation Method for Estimating Indonesian Monthly GDPs. Let's get started. Estimations of higher frequency data from less frequency observation from such an important economic variable like gross domestic products or GDP is an important measurement tool for policymakers. It is also a valuable input for the purpose of making analysis in the fields of macroeconomics and finance. However, the estimated value of gross domestic product is measured only until on a quarterly basis. If monthly data are available, the basic needs of analyzing economic situation could be satisfied more reasonably. Thus, estimating the monthly GDP become important, I think, in order to observe economic progress alongside to provide more timely data for the user to take crucial decisions. And then through this presentation, I want to show you how to estimate the monthly series by proposing a method to disaggregate the historical value of quarterly GDP data. The next is methodology. There are some existing statistical literature related to the problem of disaggregation or interpolation of the data itself. One of which is the research made by Guerrero on 2003, in which he estimated the monthly figures of GDP in Mexico. For making estimation, there are the variable of interest, in which it's consisted of preliminary series and zero mean unobservable series, which is denoted by WT and ST. For the case of Indonesia, the variable of interest itself is GDP, and GDP itself is then result from the summation of preliminary and zero mean series itself. There are two kinds of assumptions underlying to the modeling process in the next steps. There are the preliminary series WT assumed to follow an ARIMA or seasonal ARIMA model, and then the second unobservable series ST is assumed to follow the ARMA process or seasonal ARMA process. Until this slide, I just that you want to know what is the preliminary series, right? Yes, preliminary series or WT is a series that has to be estimated from the variables related to the GDP. The variable underlined is also called as auxiliary variable or constituent indicator in other research or other existing literature. Here is some criteria in order to get reasonable preliminary estimate itself. The first is the variable, that auxiliary variable or constituent indicator itself admits an adequate economic interpretation. The second variable has the high correlation with the variable of interest, in this case is monthly GDP, and then the variable has the same length with the length of desired of monthly series. In this case, in my research, I use the index, Indonesia's production index, as a auxiliary variable to get the preliminary series itself. And what is the production indexes? In this case, I use the index of large medium manufacturing production index. This figure is published monthly by Statistics of Indonesia, and I use the data from January 2000 until the last month of December 2018. The next, after we get the IP figures, and then I built an IP IGR, a new variable IP aggregate, by averaging the monthly figures of IP, because we know that IP is a monthly series. Thus, we make a regression model using the IP AGR itself, and It obtained the regression model as you seen in the screen in the first equation. The R square is high, and then you can see that the estimate value, the intercept and coefficient from the equation 1 has the same value with the in the equation 2, which means that the equation 2 is the column of WTF preliminary series, which is we want to make an estimate value from this equation, from this model. After that, after we estimate the value of the WT, then we make an estimate from that estimate. And we use that value by using the ARIMA model, standard technique of ARIMA model. Because we know that GDP is have the seasonal pattern, we use the seasonal ARIMA model, yielding the following by result as well as you see in the equation 3. Seasonal ARIMA 1110, 112, 1011 subscript 12. After we know the series of preliminary WT, then let us consider how to estimate the zero mean on the surface series ST. And in the previous slide, I said that the WT, after it estimated, we make the GDP AGRI, which is the subscript I denotes the quarterly series. And then we make the difference between the actual value and the predictive value, DI, which is you can see in the equation 4. And then we make a model by ARMA model. We remember that in this ST series, we assume that it follow an ARMA model, as you can see in the equation 5. And then from that estimation, from that result in equation 5, then we build an standard ARIMA model again, ya kan? After we use the seasonal ARMA model, and then after we estimate the value after using the standard technique of modeling time series by ARMA, we get the model is seasonal ARMA 003100 subscript 12, as well as seen in the equation 6 in the screen. Next. Once the estimate model for series ST, zero mean unobservable series, is available, the basic formulation can be applied to disaggregate the GDP series by summing the series of WT and ST, as well I said before. And you can see that this is the table of how I do estimate the monthly series. You can see in the left side is a quarterly series data, GDP quarterly of Indonesia, and then make several variable related to that. And then after the segregation process, in the right side, you can see is a monthly series, which is come from the summation of preliminary series, and then also variable series, which we have estimated before. After that, we make an forecast from the model that we get, GDP G, GDP monthly that we get in the previous slide. We make an estimation of that. We make a forecast value of that in the form of upsample forecast. As you can see that to make ensure that the model is appropriate to predict it, we calculate the mean absolute percentage error as it will use to check the appropriate of the time series analytic model. And as you can see that outsample MAPE is around 30%, as well as you see in the right side, based on the categorization by Lewis in his books. I think that the model for forecasted the monthly series for the next period, in this case is 2019 and 2020, is reasonable to be done. Next. As well, you can see that in this screen, the trends of Indonesian economic activity is upward trend. There are several seasonal, which means that there are the high production or high price in certain period and certain month or certain quarter in the period of analysis. I think that from the research, I just can give the recommendation both for economic side and also from the statistical side. From the economic side, Indonesia current strength growth between 5 and 6%. Indonesia need to boost economic performance even in the midst of uncertainty and global economic slowdown. And several ways can be applied by governments, such as making good governments and institutions, maintaining foreign direct investment, and boost interregional infrastructure. For the statistical side, I suggest that for the next or the future research, I suggested to develop the model with the structural breaks. You know the structural breaks? Structural breaks is the condition that can affect the result of estimation of time series because it has the significant impact of the result from the estimation or forecasting because it has the big difference between one regime and other regime. I mean that, for example, the structural breaks like monetary crisis or even world pandemic right now, like COVID-19, which has a significant impact in global economy. It's developed the model with structural breaks, as well as for the estimations of monthly GDP, using the strategy or formulation that I said before. And two, the second is try another variable indicator. As I said before, I use the coincidence indicator or auxiliary variable is, you know, IP, index of production of Indonesia. I think that it could be used another, or it could be try another variable like consumer or producer price, and also wholesale price index and other etc. variables that you can try it for knowing whether the model is better or not rather this model. As conclusion, as brief, for a final brief, because the theme is integrated statistics for integrated analysis, I just want to summary. This research is integrated, use the integrated data source. The first is quarterly gross domestic product, and the second is monthly index of large medium manufacturing production. I use these two kinds of the data. I integrated the two kinds of the data, and then I disaggregate the variable of interest, the quarterly GDP. I disaggregate it to get the estimation of monthly GDP, and then from the monthly GDP, the GDP is still on quarterly basis, and while the monthly data are available, it will give the more reasonably satisfaction for analysis, for stakeholders, for policymakers, for governments, and etc. I think that it's for my presentation. If you have a question, can chat in the screen or please free to email me in my email as screen as you can see right now. Thank you for your attention. Good day for you.
Okay. Thank you, Ilham. I'm really excited about seeing the structural break of COVID-19 in your GDP forecast. Maybe after this, you will start doing this, right?
Yes, structural break is well the interesting parts to develop in the future. Structural break.
Yeah. Yeah, we will see. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was very interesting, really.
Thank you, Aishan.
Again, as Ilham said, please write your questions in the meeting chat. Also, you can ask individually, of course, if you have more detailed questions. And again, I would like to remind that Alec and Han just created another poll because the first one, I think there was a technical problem. Please vote for the poll. We have two basic questions. If you have integrated statistics in your institution, and if yes, What are they? In which area do you integrate statistics? We really would like to know. Okay, now we go on with the next presentation from Craig. He will talk about the bilateral support to the Nepal data ecosystem. Are you ready, Craig? Yes, here is the, I can see Craig, but the,
I think he's muted. Okay.
yeah, but the presentation is on. Floor is yours, please.
So you can see that okay?
Yes, we can see the presentation, okay. Craig, yeah.
Great, thank you. Well, my name's Craig and I work for DFID, based in Nepal, but I'm currently in London. Just to say before I get started, just overnight or yesterday, it was announced that DFID would be merging with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office in the UK. So by September, DFID won't exist anymore as it gets merged into another department. But for today, I will carry on using DFID during the discussion. So my discussion today is focusing on bilateral support to the Nepal's wider data ecosystem. So it's not just focused on the national statistics system, but also more widely than that as well. So just a bit of a summary on what I covered today. I will talk a little bit about a background about the Nepal data ecosystem and the change in context over the last 3 to 4 years. I'll discuss about some of the emerging priorities from our perspective as a bilateral development partner, and then also talk about DFID's changed approach based on the change in context. So as a bit of background to Nepal and the wider data ecosystem, the new constitution came in 2015, and this changed the governance structure to a federal one. So now there is 3 spheres of government in effect: the federal state, provinces, of which there are 7, and 753 local municipalities or local governments. The constitution came in 2015, but elections to vote in elected officials at each of those levels happened over 2017 and 2018. So the changes have only really been in place for 1.5 years to 2 years. So it's all relatively new. Officially, Nepal's national statistics system is centralised, but in reality, there are a lot of other government actors outside the Central Bureau of Statistics that produce data and official statistics. And also the production of statistics in the past has been quite top-down and very Kathmandu focused, with enumerators coming usually from Kathmandu and or working through districts, which is part of the old admin structure of Nepal. So when we go out and talk, as we've done a lot of consultation with local governments and provincial governments, we find that there is some mistrust of statistics coming from the centre. Especially as provincial and local officials feel that the data that comes out from Kathmandu is sometimes not representative or doesn't reflect the reality on the ground of what they see. And there's some confusion at the moment around who's collecting data and who's in charge and managing that. Both provincial and local governments are now data producers and users. They've been given a mandate under the Constitution to be able to collect their own data now and produce their own statistics. And they need this data at the local level to be able to develop their own policies and plans and budgets. So I'll go through now 4 of the emerging priorities as we see it at DFID in Nepal. The first one is around national statistics system strengthening. And it's quite clear. Oops, where have I gone? So the Constitution, as I was just saying, provides for a statistical office to be established in each province. But these offices are not in place yet through the CBS or not up and operating completely. but there needs to be, so while those offices haven't been established, a number of provincial governments, for example, have started to legislate around statistics and started to set up their own offices, stats offices, and started to collect data for themselves. So there really needs to be some clarity around the leadership and coordination roles of the Central Bureau of Statistics across government spheres and across different levels around the country. And this is starting to happen already. And the government in Nepal, through the CBS and the Planning Commission, have adopted a new NSDS, which was put in place near the beginning of last year. There's also been a new Statistics Act that has been drafted, and that's progressing through Parliament now, although obviously that's probably been put on hold with COVID-19 and other things surpassing that in importance. And the government has plans to address these issues. And as a partner, we're looking at ways that we can support this implementation of these changes over the next few years. The next priority we're focusing on is around data generation. CBS will obviously continue, the successful implementation of core statistical activities that they've already been doing. This includes surveys and census production, which is ongoing. But there really is a critical need for a long-term production schedule for national surveys, especially those supported by development partners in Nepal. A World Bank analysis that was undertaken over the last year or so has revealed that there's been at least 200 surveys conducted in Nepal since 2010, and over 75% of these have been funded by development partners. However, the majority of these, over 80%, the survey data are not actually available for public access, which means there's a real risk of users, whether it's government or academics or public or other civil society organisations, not being able to find data that's already out there and duplicating efforts or going and collecting data again that may already exist. That production schedule with development partners coordinating with government is really important. And a good example of some of the issues that this raises is something Ram Hari talked about earlier, and poverty data. Like the latest Living Standards survey was produced in 2010, and it was scheduled to happen 2-3 years ago, but got pushed back a bit by a mix. And this is a good example where there's been 3 mix in the last 10 years, as well as 2 DHS. But that poverty data that comes from the Living Standards survey is crucial to a lot of decision making, and especially now during COVID-19, when development partners and government really want to be able to identify areas of poverty and vulnerability to make sure that we are providing support to the right places, and the data isn't really up to date enough to be of real use. So this is an example, I think, of development partners' timelines and agendas overtaking what's really important for the country's data needs. This is something we're really keen to work on and help coordinate across partners and get a better system in place. The third emerging priority is around data use. Obviously, the number of data users has increased, exponentially as provincial and local governments all become producers and users of data. So we're really keen to support the short-term immediate data needs of especially local governments and provincial governments, help them access and use existing statistics and data that are already available, instead of them going out and collecting new data and spending a lot of money doing that. We're also really keen to help build the skills of both local bureaucrats and elected officials and building their capacity for data production, data collection and processing and analysis, but also in how to use evidence and use statistics for policy making, planning and budgeting. And we're starting to emphasise more and more the use of evidence and statistics in evidence-based decision making. And our fourth priority that we've started to focus on is around open data. There's already a strong open data community in Nepal, and they're all working together to strengthen demand, supply, and use of open data. And this is based on this is civil society working together, private sector, and also citizens. There are a number of open data portals which have been opening across a range of issues, including disability, hydropower, taxation, and many, many more. The demand for data in Nepal has grown hugely in urban areas, but it's worth noting that use remains limited. So people want to see this data, they want access to it, but the ability to use it in a real way is still not quite there. And there are a lot of data about products which are shared ad hoc. This is through government and development partners. And as I said earlier, development partners contribute to hundreds of surveys, but few are available online, which is a real problem. We really need to develop a more open and transparent approach to data access and dissemination, both as development partners, but also across government. And we're all trying to work together on that. So DFID's focus up to now, since 2016, we've had a program of support through the Evidence for Development program, and we've done a lot of work with, we support the World Bank, we support the Asia Foundation and development initiatives working on local data and open data, and we're also working with UNDP with the Ministry of Finance on aid effectiveness. But I guess the key thing around that is it's been mostly focused on Kathmandu and the federal government, or what is now the federal government, but central government, you know, line ministries and data producers in Kathmandu. Whereas what we really want to focus on now with the change in context and as the constitution comes into effect and provincial and local governments producing and using their own data, we're really starting to shift that emphasis away from Kathmandu, although we're still working with Kathmandu in the federal state, that's still really important, but more and more emphasis on working with provincial and local governments. So again, we're working through the World Bank to do that. You know, they have supported the national stat system with things like national accounts, poverty estimates, and hopefully the Living Standard Survey will take off in the next year or so. The Asia Foundation are continuing to support the open data ecosystem, but also looking to support local governments in accessing and using data, and also working with the provinces. And UNDP will also continue to support aid effectiveness. They will have a greater emphasis on working with Ministry of Finance and other line ministries on evidence-based policy making, where we're really starting to push the use of evidence and making decisions. And lastly, we're also providing some support to UNFPA for the 2021 census, which is still being planned for next year, but may be affected by COVID. We will have to see how things develop over the next 6 months. So so that's sort of where we're at now and our sort of thought process and how we've got here. So I'll leave it there and pass it back to you, Asan, if that's okay.
You finished?
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. It seems like there is a lot to do still in this data ecosystem. And I'm really interested in your initiative on open data initiative you are working on. Thank you very much for your contribution. Please, all the audience could write their questions on the meeting chat window so that we could, the presenters could answer at the end. Okay, and now I am moving to our last but not the least presentation from Yoga. Yoga will present us about the analysis of input and output tables. Yes, Yoga, please.
Okay, can you see my presentation right now?
No, not yet. Please share your screen.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you see it?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And can you make it in the slideshow mode,
Okay.
please?
Okay. Hello, greeting everyone from Jakarta, Indonesia. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Yoga, and I'm right now working in BPS Statistics of Indonesia. And in this opportunity, I would like to present my research that has titled The Analysis of Input-Output Table, Integrated of Economic Development by Leading Sectors in Indonesia. And today, I want to explain from the introduction, the methodology, result, and conclusion. So we start with the introduction. So according to neoclassical economic theory, the regional economic development depends on the availability of resources that series of activities that originate in human capital accumulation, also technology and the output. And the maximizing of production function means the maximizing all available resources that include in the physical, naturals, also human capital, that also play a role in the production process to lead the human welfare. So not exception with Indonesia as a big country with consists of 17,000 islands and 267 million people. It is the world's fourth most populous country, so needs a complex and comprehensive policy to maximize the resources in the economic development process according to some indicators. And the common indicators that are used by our country is gross domestic product. But in fact, GDP only shows the sector shares of total and cannot describe the interrelationship between one sector to another sectors and also the leading sector. So a comprehensive analysis method is needed like input-output table analysis to take a great policy. So this research has objective to analyze the structures of input-output table, analyze the leading sectors through backward and forward linkage, and the last is explain the economic driving sector through output, income, employment, and value-added multiplier. And next, we move to the methodology. Okay, this research used input-output table with 17 sectors, and input-output table present the information of the transaction of goods and services in production function. And from input-output table, we also conduct an index of forward and backward linkage. And then we also calculate the inverse of length metric to compute multiplier. And this research used for type of multiplier is output, income, labor, also value added. So with that analysis, we also can determine and identify the leading sectors. Next is the result. First is all about the structures of IO table. From reviewed from three aspects: intermediate, input, value added, and output of 17 sectors. Sector 3 and manufacturing industry contribute the highest shares, and the fifth sectors is water supply, waste management, waste and recycling contribute the lowest share. Next is about the forward and backward linkage. For linkage, describe how an increase in output of a certain sector will encourage an increase in the output of other sectors. And the backward linkage describe an increase in the output of a certain sector will increase the input demands of other sectors. And
Yoga,
yes?
Yoga, sorry to interrupt, but your slides are not developing. We are still in the first slide. Can you move the slides, please, and go to the screen? I mean, slideshow screen. Slides are not changing. Yes, yes. And can you share it at the slideshow mode? To the slideshow mode with F5.
Can you see it?
Yes, and the slideshow mode, please.
This is the slideshow mode, I think.
No,
You
it's
can
not.
press F5. Okay.
Can you see?
Anyways. Yes, okay. Please go ahead.
Okay, I will continue about the result.
Yes,
Okay.
please go ahead. Yes,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you.
From structures of input of a table reviewed from three aspects: intermediate input, value added, and the output. The sector 3 is manufacturing industry contribute the highest shares, and the fifth sectors is water supply, waste management, waste and recycling contribute the lowest share. The next is forward and backward linkage. From the definition, we know that forward linkage describes how an increase in output of certain sectors will encourage an increase in the output of other sectors, and the backward linkage describes an increase in the output of a certain sector will increase the input demands of other sectors. And the table 2 represents the result of forward and backward linkage calculation. And the sector 3 has the greatest value of IFL, and the sector 4 has the greatest value of IPL. And from that calculation, we conduct also the quadrant analysis. And the sector may reactive or sensitive to the change of the final demands represented by quadrant 1 and 2. And the sector that has a leverage power in the economic activity represented by quadrant 1 and 4. For this quadrant analysis, we know that the leading sectors represented by IFL and IPL that has a value greater than 1 are in quadrant 1, and there are 2 sectors that include in this quadrant. So in this quadrant, there are manufacturing industry and also procurement of electricity and gas supply. Next is multiplier analysis. Multipliers measure...
Sorry. Can you move to next slide, please?
Yes.
Your slides are not moving. You are in the same slide again. Can you move? Can you move to next slide?
Yes, I moved to the next slide right now. I think the connection maybe.
No, just move on. Which slide are you now?
In multiplier analysis.
Yes, now. Yeah. Okay.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Go ahead.
So multipliers measure the total effects on either output, income, employment, or value added given an increase in one unit of output of a particular industry. And here are the example of interpretation. And then the sectors, I think sector 4 has an output multiplier 2.1992. That means that if the final output of the sectors may increasing by 1 million rupiah, so the output of all sectors in that economy increase 2.92 million rupiah. In line with linked analysis, the sector 3 and sector 4, manufacturing industry and also procurement of electricity and gas supply has the contribute the greatest economics, and also as a leading sectors that support the economic development of Indonesia. And from the explanation, we can make a conclusion that from initial analysis, manufacturing industry and procurement of electricity gas sector are the leading sectors and most potential sector to support the economic development of Indonesia. And moreover, both sectors, according to the result of forward and backward linkage, have the greatest value compared to another sectors. In line with linked analysis, multiplier analysis from 4 different approaches shows that both sectors also have the greatest value. So that's all of my presentation. Thank you for the appreciation and the time. Terima kasih and thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Yoga, for your presentation. And now we have some questions on the meeting chat. And if you have more, you can still write your questions. And there are 2 questions for Craig. Craig, can you please answer the questions?
Yeah, sure. I've written a response here to Ramhari on the surveys and survey clearance, and a lot of the surveys I talked about in the analysis are DP surveys, not government surveys that have gone through the national statistics system. So often they are. So often they are ones which are paid for by development partners for their programs or for other purposes. And as I say there, often DPs push, development partners push for open data from government, but often we're not very good at doing it ourselves, which is something we need to address as well. And then further up, there's a question about open data and what government department, I think what statistics office and open data. We do some work with CBS, but they have their own systems in place. A lot of our work on open data is very much focused on civil society. And at the moment, the Age Foundation has over 30 partners through private sector, civil society, NGOs, working in areas of open data on their specific interests. But we're also working with the National Planning Commission, and we work with the National Information Commission as well. So we're working across government to try to push that agenda. And we're also working on right to information through the legislation on that. But unfortunately in Nepal, the space is closing a little bit, and the openness around rights to information, things like that, are getting tighter rather than more open. So we're trying to work outside government as well. I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think there's no more question, if I'm not missing. No. Okay. I wish we could do the poll, but it didn't work very properly. Sorry about this. And this is our first experience. I mean, my first experience as an online chair. And there are some, of course, difficulties in making the meeting online. But to summarize, I would like to, end up the session, just a small summary of the session. And actually, we had a poll about not evaluation, but the basic ideas, main ideas that we have learned from this session. Just a few terms, if you could do the session, I would appreciate that. And in this session, we covered many interesting topics from different countries. We have seen that how harmonization of administrative data is a challenging job. And it has been our major challenge of integrating this administrative data, mostly because the different agencies are concerned, as I can see, in all of the countries. Also, there are cases that we integrate data from private and formal sector. For example, in case of Bhutan, we see how integration of government data with private data is integrated. And also we have seen coincident indicator for the GDP, which Indonesia had shared with us very interestingly. And also in Craig's presentation, I found out that how important the legal framework is for the quality of statistics. If we have a good, if we need to integrate data, first of all, we need to have legal framework very strong, I think. And open data portals that Craig was mentioned was another issue that we would like to face in the future when we integrate the data as the statistical institutions. These are the notes I just summarized from all of the 6 presentations. I would like to thank all of the presenters and all of the participants from many different countries. And I would like to give the floor to Alec if he would like to add some more words, please.
Thank you, Aishan, and all the authors and all dear colleagues that have been in this session. I think we are almost coming to the end of this session. But before we do that, I want all of us to reflect on one or two things, and I think you can maybe put your thoughts in the chat box. We've put up two questions. The first one is for you to reflect on features of statistical measurement frameworks that do have capacity or have measurement gaps with respect to SDGs in your own countries. So we really want to hear some thoughts on what features of your statistical measurement frameworks for SDGs do have some very specific measurement gaps. And also, we want to hear your reaction in terms of giving some very candid, specific examples on a statistical compilation that is actually using data from multiple sources and is being used continuously to produce specific statistics. So you can give us your thoughts maybe just by typing in the chat box. And I think we've also put up an evaluation form that please feel free. We need to get as much feedback as possible. So two things, maybe your reflections on those through the note page, I think would be appreciated. And then the evaluation, and if at all there are any other issues, please feel free to raise them up. You can simply click the hand button if you have something to say. Thank you.
Okay. I think no more questions.
Yeah,
I think we will have. Sorry, Alec. I think we will have some housekeeping reminders that there will be the evaluation of the session online. The link will be shared with you. Please evaluate the session, and all the documents will be shared in the ESCAP's page. I would like to thank again for the ESCAP for all the efforts, and for the presenters and audience once again. Alec, would you like to close?
It's all for you, Aishan, please.
Okay. Thank you very much, all. See you next time in another meeting. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Alec, Aishan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alec, Aishan.
Bye.